Joining us now for the first time in the 2023 season, a beloved member of the Sun Devil community. You've heard him belt out opera music with his glorious, beautiful voice that just gets your emotions running to all-time highs. You've also seen him and his personality on the Pac-12 Network. Great friend of ours. Thrilled to welcome back our guy, good buddy Gus Farwell. Gus, my man, welcome back.
Gentlemen, what the heck is going on? Good to be here. It's been far too long, I think. It's been I've missed you guys, so it's good to be back.
There you go. And for those who weren't in this room with us, we had some interesting conversations before we went live here. So we're already fired up for this conversation. But we're going to talk Sun Devil football, quarterbacks, and all of that good stuff that Gus Farwell is highly, highly prepared to discuss.
Oh, yeah. Ready to go.
All right, man. So as a quarterback yourself, what do you think it was that caused Kenny Dillingham? I know that he's given the reasons that he has. What was he looking at? Why did he choose Jaden Rashada as QB1? Why did he opt for the true freshman over a few other experienced options?
It's an interesting one. I've been following this kind of whole battle. I've been listening to you guys and your guys' opinions about it all and everything else, and sort of everybody else's, and they all seem to kind of match up that it wasn't necessarily going that way. And so the fact that it has is surprising, but at the same time, I'm not surprised that it's happened. I'm surprised that it's happened this quickly. For me, I think it just came down to the fact that there was a moment in Camp Tonazona that I saw on tape, and and I know that the offense had been struggling, and I'd love to talk about the defense as well too, by the way, because I think they're great. But the defense was kind of having their way with the offense. The offense was struggling, and then I think he threw like a deep post route, Rashada, and just beautiful ball, right? Like the type of ball that you just want to see in slow motion, and he just drops it. The cornerback's right on the guy's shoulder, and just drops it right over the shoulder into the breadbasket touchdown. But then that gets called back, and there was a penalty on the play. And I'm pretty sure they just flipped the field and ran it the exact same play to the other side, and he did it again. And that, for me, was the moment like alarm bells started going off. And I was like, wow, okay, it's one thing to do it. And not only that, you have to, when you're in the quarterback battle, there's so much pressure on like every play, because you have limited reps. I think he was, I hate to use the word fortunate, because obviously it's sad that Drew Pine had his hamstring issue, but it was fortunate for Jaden Rashada for sure. And all of a sudden you're going from having a third of the reps to half the reps, and I think that helped him out a lot. But I think it's his ability to stretch the field and throw those deep balls. I mean, we saw it 4th and 8 with like 6 minutes to go from the 50-yard line in the second quarter, and then he just pops one and throws a deep ball for a touchdown. And so I think it's that ability which sets him apart. Now, whatever things kind of come along with the youth, I think Kenny's willing to sort of take on those issues. And look, you're going to have to learn at some point, right? We all do. You just put me in, coach, kind of thing, and that's what can we all have to do that at some point. So for him to just kind of do it now and do that first game against Southern Utah, and I thought Southern Utah actually played pretty well. Definitely improvement over the years past and stuff. So and it was definitely a game of two halves, which I'm sure we'll get into. But yeah, for me, I think that Kenny knows that he has that ability to stretch the field, but not only vertically, but width-wise as well. He's just got that extra arm talent. And, there's going to be bumps and bruises along the way, but I think that it's the upside cancels that out.
So to add to the credentials of the introduction, and I feel a sense of duty and not obligation, but pride with these introductions, because my man Gus asked me in what was a incredibly kind-hearted and amazing gesture to be the introduction to his performance at Gamage Auditorium,
That's
which is
right.
amazing. So I know that like I got to try to outdo myself a little bit here and there. We assume that all of our listeners and now viewers know, of course, that Gus was a quarterback on ASU's 1996 team that won the Pac-10 championship, went on to the Rose Bowl, played with a lot of incredible players. One player that you played with was a guy by the name of Jaden Rashada, of course, Jaden's father. So, from your perspective, what is it like not just to have a Sun Devil legacy starting at quarterback for ASU, but the son of a guy that you played with?
It's so cool, you know. I mean, like there's text threads going around with all the players and just like going like, man, hey, congratulations, everything else. We're all super excited for him and for Jaden. And you know, you couple that with the fact that we have our first ever alumnus coach in the modern era, right? As well. And so you've got that, you've got Vince Amy, the defensive line coach, who's like a brother to me. I don't think that I'm more fond of, you know, anyone than Vince. Vince is the best. And so having all of those connections for the alumni, I think is really, really cool, and just couldn't be more happy for the Rashada family. And Jaden is obviously a very, very talented player. And I think ASU's lucky to have him for sure. You know, he's lucky, but I know he'll tell you that he's lucky to have ASU. So to have that legacy and have that connection back to and you know, the fact that there's like two connections now really in the 96 team is pretty cool. And I think it's only going to help the program moving forward.
So you talked about that alum coach in Kenny Dillingham. He has quickly, at a few different coaching stops, built up a reputation as like a quarterback whisperer. And you look at what he did for Bo Nix. You look at some of the foundation help with Jordan Travis. And these are two guys that are, after 1 week, up there in the Heisman type of conversation. I mean, I know there's a lot of big statements being made, but they are right there. What is it about Kenny Dillingham that makes him so effective in mentoring these young quarterbacks, and even some that have had some ups and downs, like some of those players I just mentioned?
I think first and foremost, it's so clear to me how much he cares. And like legitimately cares about the players, because, you know, there are coaches out there for sure who really, you know, it's a lot about them. It's a lot about, you know, just sort of the spotlight or whatever. But I mean, Kenny you just can feel it from when he gets around these kids, you know, his interaction with them and everything else. And I think he just builds relationships. And then from there, my goodness, his attention to detail on the field is incredible. Like I love listening to his post-game comments because he's just so in depth, so in detail. You can see how much he knows about this game. You know, he is not the CEO type coach. He is I think he's capable of that. You know, maybe he evolves into that, but he is so hands-on. And I think just him working with those quarterbacks day in and day out, and he understands so well what's trying to be done, what they're trying to do. He has a clear picture of what he wants from his offense, especially. And so for him to be able to convey that to these guys in a manner in which they can understand and get them to grasp it, because he wants his quarterbacks to basically be, you know, the sort of old adage of coaches on the field, you know, coach's brain in a quarterback's body. And so I really just think it's his general knowledge of the game and what he is trying to do that he and you know, this is an interesting time for sure, right? Because you have such a young quarterback. I don't know that he's you know, Bo Nix was you know, a veteran, but he sort of revamped him. But to take him to have Jaden so early and to get him on the pages so early and getting him to start, you know, working and firing, and to the point where he can start a game on his 19th birthday is just incredible to me. I mean, credit to Kenny and the coaching staff and Bo Baldwin and everything else. That is no mean feat. You know, the kid was, I remember my first day of practice showing up at ASU and throwing out routes. And like every single time my throw was like a yard behind the receiver, like every single time, because in high school I could take a 5-step drop, kick up, and then release the ball. And in college, you just don't have time to do that. Your back foot hits, and then the ball's got to be out. And I just kept going, you know, sorry. And these poor guys are running their tails off, right? They're running these 12-yard out routes. I'm sorry, and they're looking at me like, who is this kid? So it's an adjustment, man, the speed and everything else. So for him to be able to do that, it's a credit to both Jaden and the coaching staff.
So one Sun Devil quarterback breaking down another. When you look at the film, when you look at the game and everything that you saw from Jaden Rashada on the field, what were some of the things that kind of jumped out to you and were most impressive about what you saw?
I liked his poise. I thought that, for being such a young guy, the second half was definitely, I think, frustrating for not only him, but the entire offense. It just seemed to be, it was definitely a game where it was the tale of the two halves. I'd say the first half, he was pretty much flawless, right? Just had the 2 touchdown passes and really, really played well, I thought. And the key is, for any young quarterback, right, is don't make the mistake. Don't make the big mistake. And for him not even really look even close to throwing a pick, I think he did struggle in the second half. There were a couple of times where, his feet were probably a little too quick. All of a sudden you've got that game pressure of like a 3rd and 4 or something like that. And feel like you got to get the ball out and you just don't take that I don't know if it's really a pause, but just a calmness about having confidence in your own ability to get that ball to the player in time. So but I mean, it was impressive for sure. The second half, I think there are a couple of throws that got away from him. I think that were probably pretty actually uncharacteristic, where they just kind of sailed on him. But it was, things were wet. The field's wet. They're not really used to playing in rain much, obviously. So, there's just little things, but I think it was great that he was able to execute and avoid the big mistakes.
Both Jaden and Kenny Dillingham talked about it, kind of that lack of rhythm being the primary factor for those second half struggles, for those uncharacteristic mistakes. Yeah. How much can a long delay kind of interrupt that flow and the rhythm of a quarterback?
Look, I can't imagine. I think I've never had a delay like that, so I can't even really speak to it. All I can say is that you definitely have a rhythm. They kept using that word, right? Rhythm, and what that goes to everything. That goes in your pregame prep. What halftime is normal like? I mean, all this is new for Jaden anyway, right? So, but then you couple that with all of a sudden this 2.5 hour delay where you're sitting in your uniform. You don't, your cleats are on. Do you take your cleats off? Do you not? Do you take your shoulder pads off? How long is this going to go on? Do you eat? I mean, even just eating something can just sort of change things for you, because everything is so regimented. When you eat before the game, we all go to the same restaurant and things like that. All these things are like planned down to the minute. So like Jake and I, for instance, before the games, we used to have our own little sort of pregame routine, where we would go out well before the actual warm-ups and we would just toss the ball around. And then we had this strange little thing. I don't even know how it started, but it became this when we did the exact same thing every time, where we do these kind of like weird throws. Like we'd be rolling out and I'd start running down the field and then he would throw it and then he would do the opposite. And so we just had this thing. And I remember there was a throw that he made in the U of A game that year. And I remember after the game, he's just like, man, he goes, I made that throw because it reminded me of our warm up. And so for Jaden to be in a position where I think he only had like a few minutes to warm up and throw again, and it's just tough. And like all of a sudden it's not just, making a few throws and then going out for like a second practice. It's game. And so I think it was really tough on him. I know that Coach Dillingham was basically saying, it shouldn't affect them and it's adversity and everything else, but I think it did affect them, whether it was supposed to or not. But there are little things. Who cares? At the end, it's a W, right? It's a weird game. It was a weird game. It's a weird game, you getting out of the parking lot at 4:30 a.m. and everything else to go along with it. But hey, W is a W. The Kenny era, 1-0, baby. Let's go.
So what did you make of the game that was called by offensive coordinator Bo Baldwin, calling a game that is for a true freshman making his first collegiate start? And were there any kind of things that you might have done or approached differently?
I was impressed. I don't know. First of all, let's start with the good stuff, right? Or maybe we do it the other way around. I thought they got maybe a little bit conservative in the second half. I know that they were kind of trying to clock manage, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. I thought especially the last drive when the defense just made a key stop and got them the ball back. That whole series where they ran off I think it was about 4.5 minutes of clock to just end the game. We used to call it kill the cat, where you're just running down the clock. You're not really trying to score, but you're just trying to get first downs and keep the clock going. I thought he did an amazing job of that. And again, credit to Jaden and the offensive line as well to be able to do that, because it's not an easy thing to do. In the first half, I thought they were aggressive. I liked the aggressive nature. I mean, I remember I was sitting in the touchdown room at the network, and we were like, wow, they're going for it on 4th and 8 from almost midfield. And then they popped that play, and we were all like, I mean, everyone was yelling like, whoa, like amazing. So, and then the clock management again at the end of the half to be able to go and basically score with just a few seconds left. And to have the goal, actually, what was there, 5 seconds left, I think, when they called that fade?
Yeah.
To give your freshman quarterback, like, we're going to go throw a fade with 5 seconds left rather than take the field goal. I mean, those are aggressive decisions. And, I think Kenny said, like, thankfully we did call that, because it was the difference in the game. So, yeah, I thought they did a good job. And, there's one other thing that I suspect that they were holding back. I actually have a feeling that they might have other plays that they would normally call in maybe a bigger game against a tougher opponent. Like I think in the fourth quarter, we started to see shifts in the offense. I don't remember seeing that in the first half. And so I think they were starting to open the playbook up a little bit just to make sure that they got the W. But I'll definitely be looking forward to seeing things in the coming weeks.
Now, the old adage is that teams make their biggest improvements and biggest jumps between week 1 and week 2. First off, why do you think that is, just kind of in a general sense, but also looking at Jaden in the quarterback position, where do you think that we could see the kind of biggest jumps from that week 1 to week 2 now that he's got that first start out of the way?
Yeah, I think the reason for that is because you finally have tape. It's just simple as that. You get to see, you get put in those situations, and as much as you try, every coaching staff, in the country tries to mimic game day situations, even in scrimmages and things, but you just can't. There's just no sort of replacement for just having those game day experiences, those snaps and everything else. So once you have that and you've got tape, and then, and they'll be looking at a lot of different things. Like you said, there's probably a lot to clean up. I was concerned primarily with the amount of penalties again. I don't know why we seem to want to be penalty university, but it's, but I guess that's first week kind of stuff. So hopefully that will improve. I know the last 2 years, what have we been, like 3rd in penalties in the FBS or something like that, something crazy. So I think that will help being able to do that. And then for Jaden especially, just seeing those coverages, just seeing how a defense is trying to mess with you. They're disguising things, knowing that he's a young quarterback. They'll come at him. They'll try to deceive him. I thought he did a good job handling it, and so he'll definitely want to see all of that tape. But then I think as well, you see what you miss. That's probably the most important thing as a quarterback, is you go back and you're like, because sometimes you have a feeling for it in the game, but then, when you see it on tape and it's just so like glaringly obvious, where there's, maybe a play where somebody's just running completely wide open and you're fixated on somebody else. And I think that's probably one place where he'll continue to improve. Is I think he was making quite a few pre-snap reads, which is good when it works. And then, the ability to just go through your progressions and come off a receiver, even when you think that that's the right place to go, that comes with experience, that comes with age. And he'll just continue to get better at that.
So this season strikes me as one where internal leadership is going to be a really, really important thing between a new coaching staff, a lot of roster turnover, that unfortunate news that came through the chutes just a couple days before the first game about the postseason ban, keeping things together, going into a positive direction because the future is very bright around here. What does Rashada have to do as that young, true freshman quarterback who is just kind of by default because he's QB1 put into a strong leadership role? What does he need to do his part from a leadership perspective?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, right? I mean, to come in and just be so new and so, I mean, I don't want to use the word green, but you kind of are when you show up, and he's only been here for a couple of months, and you're even new to campus and classes and everything else. So I think it's challenging, but I think that there's a strong enough leadership group in and around this squad where he doesn't have to be that super vocal guy. I think he's a pretty naturally quiet guy anyway. But so for him, and it's, I think it's more important for him to just relax into it and you don't have to try to like be this sort of, okay, I'm QB1 now and I'm going to beat my chest and I'm going to be the guy who's going to yell at everybody and this, that, and the other. I think he might, at least yet, he's not that guy to be a super vocal leader. I mean, Plummer was so intense in practice, but he was so intense in practice, but he could go back and forth between like being super joking around and then everybody else would be joking around. And then Jake would just decide out of nowhere that it was time to compete. And he would just turn on a dime. And by the way, if you didn't change immediately to super intense, he would, he'd kind of bite your head off and he'd give it to you. So he was a really intense leader. And I don't think there's anybody who questions the fact that he was the leader of that team and he led by example in that intensity. And I think he can just focus on leading by example, showing up, working, being that guy who's in there, doing the film, doing the tape, putting in the hours, first guy to show up, last guy to leave kind of thing. And just by doing that and being a teammate to his teammates, I think is enough for him right now. And he'll just grow. He'll grow as a human. He'll grow as a person. And he'll find his way into that leadership role. And I think he's really poised to do really well.
So now, though, Jaden Rashada is the starting quarterback now and certainly may continue to be for the duration of the season. There's some talent behind him that is competing. Trenton Bourget started a number of games last season, showed what he has. You mentioned Drew Pine comes from being the primary starter at Notre Dame. He's coming back from injury, and that timetable's still kind of to be determined. But what are some of the things that Jaden Rashada has to do in order to keep that starting position all year long, knowing that, especially when everybody's healthy, there are going to be a couple of very experienced quarterbacks that are nipping at his heels?
I think he just needs to continue to execute and avoid the big mistakes. That's the key for me. Is just I think that the coaching staff will have patience with him because they realize that his ceiling is so high, and he'll only continue to get better. I mean, as far as a starting block, that was a great starting block. Because a game could go a lot of different ways, right? And you can make mistakes. And so for him to not have made those mistakes early, and if he can just continue to do that, like, look, every quarterback's going to throw picks, right? Like, it's going to happen. And I think as a fan base, as a coaching staff, people need to continue to be patient with him. And I mean, it's crazy with all the other quarterback play around the conference right now. It's so loaded. So for him, I think he just needs to come out to continue to execute, do what is being asked of him, and avoid the mistakes.
Well, Gus Farwell, my man, our guy, it truly is football season now that we've been able to connect at least virtually. We understand that you're going to be making your way down to Tempe before too long, maybe a couple times a year. Do you want to give us maybe a little teaser for all the folks that will want to try to catch you if they can, or at least just celebrate the fact that you're back in Tempe? What you got planned for the football season?
Yeah, well, I'll definitely be out for the USC game. I have to be in studio next weekend up here in Northern California, so I won't be able to make it out next weekend. But definitely be out for the USC game, and then I'm really hoping to come out for the Oregon game at the end of the year and the Territorial Cup, baby, when it comes back to Tempe And then hopefully I'm planning on going to the Pac-12 championship game for the last Pac-12 championship game ever. But I'm very excited and can't wait to be back in Tempe and see everybody. There's just nothing better. I always say we pretty much win the national championship every year because you get to come back to Tempe to watch a football game. So
amen to that, my friend. Well, always great to catch up. Can't wait to do it again in person. Appreciate you joining us now to break down QB1 for the Devils.
Thanks, guys.